Welcome to today's video when we're going to be talking about the two newest palettes from Oden's Eye. There's a Stone and Rock palette, which is basically a beautiful grungy green color story with some browns in it. So maybe a little bit more on the neutral side. There's some multi-chromes and of course super sparkly shadows. The other palette is the Jewels and Gem palette. I think this one is my favorite color story from the two. I just feel like this one is a little bit more unique. I love the taupey tones in here. Rapture especially and Transition are really interesting tones. And the shimmers look absolutely beautiful, so I can't wait to dip into it. I'm also going to be putting up two photos I took with my phone. I've been seeing a lot of different photos of this palette, and I feel like sometimes some of the deeper mattes tend to look a little bit deeper and some of the tones just look off. And these are the closest to accuracy to capturing color stories. Something about these tones, just even on my camera, was just not picking it up. It really just depends so much on the lighting, and these photos were taken in natural light. There's also some jewelry that launched with this collection, and I did receive all the pieces. They're not really my vibe, but I will show you a couple of them that I thought were pretty nice. I'm not really sure what they're made out of at the time I'm filming this, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be some sort of metal that's supposed to be non-irritating. Unfortunately, no matter what kind of metal it is, unless it's gold or silver, it will irritate my ears, so I will not be able to wear these anyway. I believe each of these retails for about like $35 or something like that. I feel like that's a bit much for this, and I'm not saying they don't seem like high quality, but for that price I'd rather buy something from Ana Luisa or Missouri personally, especially even because they just have a little bit more of a kind of refined style, and those will be silver and gold plated. So I'm going to be creating two looks with each palette, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts at the end of the video, so let's get right into it. So I'm first going to be creating a look with the Stone and Rock palette. I do want to point out that there is a typo in here, and I was definitely a bit disappointed to see this again. Both of the limited edition palettes that released last holiday for the Christmas palettes had a bunch of typos in there or just spelling errors, and I was really hoping to see an improvement on that. And the typo is on this shade right here. It should say lightheartedness. It says light-earedness. I'm starting out with a Madness, and I'm going to pop that straight into the crease and a little bit into the outer corner, just on the edges. I'm of course going to be deepening this up a bit, and I'm just going in with a little bit more, and that looks beautiful. I've always enjoyed their matte shadows. I find them super easy to use. I'm taking Cheer on the outer corner. They've got like they're very layerable. I just haven't really had issues layering them. If I would compare them to any formula, I would say Lethal Cosmetics actually. I think they kind of remind me of their formula a little bit, and I love Lethal's mattes. I have almost all of them, and I'm just putting that out here, very kind of specifically placed only here. I don't want to really bring it up here too much. I'm just saying a lot of hear ye, hear ye. And I'm also bringing that underneath my lower lash line just to connect with the outer corner, and then I'm going to take Menace underneath the rest of my lower lash line. And this is looking super grungy, and I'm loving it. So I'm not actually going to be using any sort of a glitter primer or some sort of a tacky base. And I'm just going to use a brush, and I'm going to spray it. And then I think for one of the other three looks, I will use a glitter primer. So I mixed in my brush, and I'm going to go in with High Spirits. And this one looks like a very smooth, essentially jeweled type of multi-chrome. And I'm just going to put that out here. That is really, really pretty. Super vibrant, really, really bright. So then I'm going to go in with Frenzy, and I'm just using the same brush, and it's still a little damp, and I'm going to bring that up here for that little bit of sparkle. Just a little bit more here. Again, it's just a little bit damp. Oh, that's so pretty. And in the waterline, I put the number 5 gel liner from Oden's Eye, and here's the first finished look. I'm taking Jubilance, and I'm just gonna pop that right out here, about halfway through my lid, and then onto the outer crease, and I'm just kind of blending it in a wing shape. And I don't want too much in here, so that's why I kind of started here. So I'll get the most shadow put down here, and then I can just slowly feather it into my inner crease. And that just blended so effortlessly. Love it. Next, I'm taking Elevated. I'm going to create an eyeshadow wing with this essentially. And I'm just using this Game Beauty 05 brush. And I'm creating a wing. And then I'm gonna bring it underneath my lower lash line, just a little bit, not all the way. And then I'm gonna wipe off my brush. And I'm just gonna kind of feather this out to create a really sharp wing out there. And then just kind of feather the edges of this. Alright, so now it's shimmer time, and I really want to use Cheerfulness. I'm going to be picking it up with the R110 brush from What's Up Beauty. So I picked it up and I'm just going to mist it a tiny bit with some just plain water. I personally don't like to use setting spray because it usually has alcohol in it, and that and it does irritate my eyelids. So this one has a very kind of sparkly, ethereal, sheer look to it, which, you know, can be appreciated on its own. Just to see, I'm going to use my pinky and just layer on a little bit more. And that added just a little bit more opacity to that. And I picked up Gleefulness, and this one is super piecey and a little bit chunky. You can see the way it picked up on the brush. So I'm actually not really sure if this is going to just pick up without any sort of tacky primer help. So again, I misted my brush. And it's just, oh yeah, look at that. That is so pretty. And I'm just going to bring it out here above the wing and into my crease a little bit. I don't mind having sparkle just all over up to my brows. It's totally fine. It's going to end up there anyway because of my hooded eyelids. Picked up a little bit of Frenzy that's going to go on the inner corner as my inner corner highlight. And I'm going in with Forever, which I always thought was F-E-R, F-R-E, not F-E-R. But I guess I was wrong. And I'm going to put that underneath my lower lash line. And that's a pretty decent white matte. And here's the second finished look. Onto the Jewels and Gems palette. I'm so excited for this color story. It is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to start out with Transition. And I'm going to create a super blown out wing with that. Definitely have a little bit of fallout. And then bringing it underneath my lower lash line. Okay, try to wipe off any fallout. And then I'm going to take Intoxication. And it's just going to be used to deepen this up a bit. I'm just going to put it right up against my lash line. Just kind of stamping it on, and it's going to essentially blend itself into the really cool shade. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a grayish teal. Super cool. I'm gonna pack on a little bit more. I'm gonna take a little bit of Elation onto the inner crease of my lid. And I'm just gonna take it about this far, and I'm gonna use Ecstasy to blend out the edges, or just kind of blend them together since that is super, super light. And just help feather that out here. Taking some Karla Cosmetics Fix Potion. And I'm taking Swoon, and that's going to go right up against the matte shadow in the crease. And then onto the rest of the lid. Ooh, I don't know. I think I'm going to take High. Yes, that was a good choice. This is beautiful. So beautiful. Oh yes, and that is applying so nicely, especially with this brush. It does feel like a different kind of texture from Oden's Eye, at least to me. And here's the first finished look. Taking Sawzall, and I'm going to place it on directly onto my lid, on the inner lid and outer lid. Okay, look at this pigmentation. Wow. So I'm just kind of placing it on first. Then I'm going to go in with Seventh Heaven and put it on the edge of that. Just very gently blending that together. It does kind of create a brown color, obviously, color theory. But I kind of want this to be super grungy. Really wiping off that brush so I can get some of this color down. I'm going to take some setting powder just to help kind of feather this out without adding more product, because I feel like there was too much product on my brush that was left over. So I'm just feathering out the edges. and then going in with just a tiny bit of Seventh Heaven. And it's essentially kind of like diluting it. And then underneath my lower lash line, I'm just gonna do the same pretty much. So taking Sawzall here and here. And then I'm gonna blend Seventh Heaven into it. Taking Rhapsody, and I feel this is super, super silky smooth. It feels definitely different. It actually reminds me of that one shade from the Moonlit Seduction palette. I think I just did comparison swatches on that one. So this is the kind of shade that you can get like kind of like this wash of sparkle kind of effect, or you can go in over a tacky base and get it to be just a little bit more opaque. So here's what it looks like just on my pinky. And I'm just gonna stamp it on and see that just like amps it up quite a bit. And I'm just gonna bring it all the way up, going in with the tiniest amount of Karla Fix Potion. And I'm gonna use Rhapsody there. But because it is underneath my lower lash line, I definitely like to use some sort of a tacky primer just so the shadow and the sparkles don't move too much, since I do have the creases there. Just gonna blend away any fallout, and that is so beautiful. And of course gotta go in with an inner corner highlight, so I'm going in with Elatedness. Just gonna pop that in here. That just gives a little bit of an effect. And here's the second finished look. So before I get into my thoughts on these, I do want to talk about some things that I think Oden's Eye could improve upon. The first and foremost one just being coming out with better swatches on different skin tones. And I think, and I also agree with a lot of other people, these are just not helpful. There's not enough variation in skin tone. They are perfectly capable of it. So I really hope Oden's Eye, if you're watching this, please, please, please do better swatches on different skin tones for the launch of every product that you have. Now on to the second thing, that is just proofing and making sure that there are no spelling errors in the palettes. It just doesn't look great. I know it happens. I'm a graphic designer. It's happened to me. Typos happen. However, you try to learn from it and not let it happen multiple times. And this has been now at least 2 or 3 times this has happened. On to my thoughts on these palettes. I definitely have quite a bit of thoughts. I'm really pleasantly surprised on how some of the shimmers feel, specifically in the other palette. So let me get to that. I really like this color story. It's a really nice grungy green color story. So there's one kind of darker jeweled multi-chrome. This one is kind of hard panning, and I find it very common with these kinds of shades. Like, it definitely still picks up and it's beautiful, but I could feel it starting to want to hard pan if you kind of go in too much with your fingers. The rest of the shimmers didn't give me any issues. I didn't get a sense that they were going to hard pan. They do feel really nice and emollient. I would describe the texture to be just a little bit maybe on the thicker side. Some of these are more on the sheer side, specifically Frenzy and Gleefulness. And you can get them to be a little bit more opaque if you put them over a tacky primer or a matte eyeshadow. So I really do like this color story. I think it's a nice addition to all the different color stories that they already have. I think there's a nice mix of some lighter mattes, mid-tone mattes, and deeper mattes. I think my least favorite shadow from here is probably Splendid, because I'm never going to use a shadow like this. This is just not really something I gravitate to. It is an actual like shimmer shadow, so it's not a matte shadow with sparkles in it. It is a shimmer shadow that has silver reflex throughout it, so it is really beautiful, but personally I don't really see myself using that one. And I experienced no issues with the mattes. I really enjoy Oden's Eye mattes overall, so every time I see an eyeshadow palette that launches from them, I'm actually excited. Probably maybe a little bit more for the mattes because I like them so much. So onto the Jewels and Gems palette. This one is my favorite color story between these two, and I think this is actually my favorite color story from them to date. There's just something so beautiful about this. I love the tones in here. It's such an interesting pairing of different tones. The shimmers are spectacular in here. I do think some of the shimmers in here have a different formula than what is available in the other palette, as well as in general all their other palettes. So specifically talking about Rhapsody and Exhilaration. They just feel so silky smooth I don't know even how to explain it. They just do feel different, and they just have another level of shine. So they don't feel like the usual, a little bit like almost tiny bit waxier, thicker formula that Oden's Eye usually has. These are just silky, silky smooth. Swoon is a little bit on the squishy side. It feels a little bit wet. Such a beautiful shade. I did wear it yesterday, and I did not use any sort of glitter primer, and I just slapped it on with my finger, and it wore beautifully for at least a couple hours. So I will have to kind of test these out and see how, especially these silky shadows, wear. And then we also have a more satin-like shade, which is this one right here, and Ladiness also isn't like particularly sparkly, but it does have a really nice, almost kind of like PC formula. If the camera would focus, that'd be really lovely. Thank you. So I think you can see by the texture on my finger, this is super, super, super sheer. It really is just for that effect of like a wet look shadow, which I do really like these kinds of formulas because you can kind of just, you can use them as highlighter, you can pop them over other eyeshadows to add a little bit of extra sparkle. The mattes, again, perform beautifully in this palette. Really enjoy the mattes, not just the tones, but the formula as well. So I would love to see a palette that only has this and this kind of shimmer formula. I mean, these are just, oh, they feel so, so good. I just want to keep like swatching this one. So these are my thoughts on the newest Oden's Eye eyeshadow palettes. Let me know in the comments below if you picked any of these up, or if you're unsure. I would love to hear your thoughts. And that's everything for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.